Hey, this is Isa. I will be showing how to make a platter in this video. And this is how I get a fresh bag of clay ready for the slab roller. Okay, fresh bag of clay. I'm using Moroccan sand by Laguna Clay. I'm testing it out. So, this is my first time using it. So when you do a slab with one of these slab rollers, you want to start large and then go smaller and smaller. And every single time you pass through, I kind of do it every other one, but you want to rotate your slab so that it is pushing it, the little clay particles are being pushed and smushed every which way. It just makes it like more even when you flatten it out. So that's a trick. And then also you want to rotate it not only because of that, but also because it sticks to the fabric. And also kind of pushing in the sides, and you can kind of smash the sides down so that your clay, if it cracks, it will kind of stay in that rectangle or circle kind of shape that you want it to be. So every single time you see a crack, kind of fix that when you see it, or else it's going to get worse and worse. This clay is it's a new bag and it's pretty moist, so I don't have too many cracks, but sometimes you'll get cracks and other times you will get air bubbles too. So you can just kind of poke those as you go. Let me show you. It is asphalt paper. And what I'm going to do is kind of dirty water. So I'm going to rinse it off. This is called asphalt paper. It can be found in Lowe's, Home Depot, any large hardware store where you kind of go and buy stuff. They come in large spools, and then you take that, you cut out your pieces, and now you have an alternative for bats. I bought this bucket. It's a planter bucket, and it holds water. It allows the whole asphalt paper to be submerged, and that's what you want. You want it to be submerged for about 2 hours. I leave it in for I kind of forget about it, to be honest. So this is slip. And what we're going to do is we're going to move it around, making sure that there's no lumps, it is fully on there, and that it's an even application. Because no lumps, because we're going to turn this around, flip it upside down, put it onto our bat, and have it work as a suction. So now it just becomes one. I'm going to be applying pressure from the middle to the edge and just working it so that it's for sure on. A little tip is to have a sponge like I am, because these bats are massive. There's no splash pan. So to catch all that slip that is going to come off, your sponge is there to help you out. Alright, so now it's on there. You see a little bit of the edge come off. Alright, and I'm going to try to position it so it's kind of center, but it's okay if it's not really, because this is a lot more clay than... Alright, so now, what am I going to do? I'm going to take my sponge, I'm going to go from the inside, and I'm going to press out air bubbles and make it nice and sealed to this bat with it's pretty much just paper, bat with paper on it. I'm going to cut off my excess. Chuck it. I know that I rolled it out to 3/4, which is, I think of it as 0.75. So if I want it to be 0.5, but I kind of want it to be like in the middle of that, because I want a little bit more. I'm not gonna push it down as much and pull it out as much, because I know that I'm already at 0.75 and I don't have that much to get to 0.5 for the foot. And this is what I'm talking about, is that this, I want it to be 0.5, and so that's 0.5, so that's perfect. So I don't want to go any lower with that, but now I want to pull to 7.5, because 7.5 times 2, 7.5 is 15, and that's what I want my flat portion to be. And then I'm just going to round up the edges, and that's all I want to do for my platter. So I'm going to pull out just a tad bit more. Okay, so that's perfect. I'm going to smooth this out. I'm going to take, this is my new rib. I like this one because it's kind of bendy. Okay, so this is, I'm not using this straight up, because if I use it straight, like this way, I'm going to be taking off clay. But if I use it, so this is the way the wheel is coming this way, right? But if I use it like at this angle, like this, I'm going to be kind of like smoothing out and pressing down the clay. So it's like, it's either like this or like this, right? And I want to do this, because this is taking off clay. This is just, that's craziness. But this is smoothing it and pressing it down, because that's what you want to do with these big platters, is really make sure that this clay is really pressed down. Because have you ever gotten an S crack where in your piece it's literally an S, or like just a crack straight across it? I call them S cracks. So if you get those, that's because, one reason could be because the bottom of your piece is, the molecules aren't pressed down. They're not, you know, they're more kind of just floating, is what I visualize. Instead, you're pressing it down, you're kind of making them solid. You're kind of making them more stronger, is what I'm trying to say. Stronger. Okay. So, now I want to take this up. I took off just a tad bit of clay. I'm just using my fingertips. I'm gonna measure this again, middle to the end. It's about 7. That's pretty good. So that's 14 inches across. I want to make it 7.5, because that's 15. I'm accounting for shrinkage. So if I'm making a 16-inch plate, I want to do 18 inches, so that's my final size. But this is a 12-inch shrinkage, or 12% shrinkage, so that calculation would hit me at 16-inch. I have to make it 18 inches, so it shrinks to 2%, no, 12%. Oh my gosh, I'm confusing myself. So my center, I want it to be around 14 inches, so I'm gonna make it I'm gonna make it 15 inches. Both slower with my wheel and slower with my movements of my hands. since this is so big, when you do take off a little bit of the lip, I just stop it because this is just so brittle that it can just, it usually will, you'll like lift it up and it'll just kind of go on your plate and ruin it. But it's not ruined, but it's like, you don't really have to do a full swoop motion like you would with a smaller piece. I'm gonna kind of compress this lip, make it nice and pretty. So for this platter, I'm kind of doing like a bowl shape on the walls at the edge. So I'm going to pull out and then up. So just pulling how I want that wall to look, that is what I'm going to do, and that is what I'm doing. If you want it out more, just making sure that right now we're in the details stage, so use less water as that'll help to keep the clay from going back into mud and becoming really soft and overworked. And you can also see me using this rib. So I like how the rib is shaped, and I'm pretty much just pressing that into the side so that my side will have exactly what the rib shape is. I have a little bit of a I shouldn't have done that other thing. I never stop touching it. Keep touching it, it's gonna get destroyed. Alright, let's check. Although I don't think I can touch it any longer. That's perfect, 18 inches. Alright, let me show you how I take this off now. Alright. So, I have a super long wire tool. I'm gonna go in between the paper and the bat. So I'm not wiring this piece off like regular. I'm wiring the paper off to give that seal some air, and then take both my hands. I need to wire this one time. Looks good. And now I can use this again. I let it dry a little bit, and then I put this on it, and it'll dry a little bit more in the middle, and then I'm going to peel it off, and I'm going to trim it. So I'll show you that when it's time. Okay, I just wanted to explain it a little bit better than I did the last clip. So this helps to let the drying happen equally. Once it becomes leather hard, I will slide it onto a bat, put a bat on top, flip it over so it is upside down, peel off that asphalt paper, flip it over again so it's this way on the bat, let it dry a little bit longer, and then I will trim it from there. So before I even flip it over, I'm gonna kind of feel it, see where I'm thin, where I can start to trim off. So I'm kind of noticing that right here is where I started the foot, and from there it's nice and thin. So I don't want to touch any of that, my walls that are already done. So what I have here is some styrofoam packing stuff. I'm gonna fold it up, put it in the center was not ideal. A lot of people will like flip it, but see, I kind of just went for it. Alright, now I'm gonna start my wheel, center this on my bat. I want to use the same clay, but I'm just gonna, I know that it's not gonna stick onto it. I'm just using some recycled clay that I have. Roll it into a snake. And I like to hold my piece while I press down because sometimes it'll push. And I'm gonna do 3 large snakes. Okay, jumping into it, I took my ruler and I measured from the middle to the end. I measured, I think it was 7 inches, so 14 fully across, and that is where I want my foot to end. And then that little tiny circle in the middle, I measured 2 inches, so it's 4 inches across, and that is where I'm going to start my other foot. With big platters like this, you want something in the middle to kind of keep the whole platter from falling inward, because it will want to kind of droop and sag on the inside. So to combat that, you put a foot in the middle, and it will help with that. I'm using this tool right now. It can be found in, if you go to like, I have Michael's or Joann's near me, I think. They're a massive chain in the US, and they sell kind of like ceramic packets. This is a tool that's in there, and I really like it because it has a nice sharp edge. So and before this, I felt my piece. I know how thin the walls are and where it's thick. So one thing to keep in mind is like, you want to know that, and also you don't want to go too thin, because that is also a no-no, where you have too thin and too thick of a bottom. So yes. And skinny, I'm not gonna leave it this massive thing because I don't want to. And there's no reason to have, your foot should match the thickness of the rim. The reason why you want the foot to be thin is because you want it to have as little contact to the surface as possible. And by the surface, I mean the table, whatever you're putting it on. That being said, like I just said, it should still be the thickness of the lip or your walls. So why do I leave this kind of to the end? Because sometimes you'll kind of mess up or go too far. I like to leave this as, it's kind of like the details of throwing. So I like to leave the details to the end, you know, because that's when you put the details on. You don't want to put the details on first, because then you have to work around the details. You see what I mean? So I do want to say something that I realized I didn't need this middle point, but I added it anyways. But if you have that smaller ring in the middle, you most likely don't need that middle point unless you are experiencing some, or if you only do the middle point, you might be able just to get away with the middle point and not that smaller ring. Anyway, just thought I'd share that, is that I just worked a little bit too hard and I made it have a middle point when it didn't need to have a middle point. Anyways, okay, back to the video. Bevel that in. I don't know if bevel is the right word, but that's what I'm using. So I like it where this is kind of angled in, and this one is also angled in. So it kind of goes straight and then in. Kind of like this. If I was to cut it in half. if I was to cut it in half, this is what I kind of have a little bit right now. And this is also what I want to cover. So your inside, if your inside looks like this or your inside looks like this, whatever shape you have, you want the outside to mimic that shape. And you want this to kind of be the same width as everything else. So you want it to be uniform. Wherever the direction changes, that is where you put your foot. So with this one, my direction change is kind of here, so I'm going to put my foot there. If my direction changes here, I'm going to put my foot here because that makes the most sense. And that's closer to the direction change. So if I wanted my direction change to be over here, that's fine. But don't make it thick. You know what I mean? Don't leave all this stuff in. Kind of mimic this area here, and then you can do that. So you kind of can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So, this, I'm going to use this tool, and it has this other side to it. And this is by Templar Tools 8R3. I like this because it's pointy. Around my foot, I'm going to use, you can use a spoon. Sometimes I use a spoon, but I have this right now that's clean. So I'm going to be using this. It's just a metal and it's clean, and I'm just going to kind of burnish my foot. Just burnish a little bit and then go with my fingers and clean it up a little bit more. You can also use a sponge, but I don't really like to use a sponge. Hey yo, it's me again. I am going to explain why I do not like to use a sponge in this case is because I just closed the pores when I burnished, and if I add a sponge onto this, it will open up those pores and the grog in this will come through. I don't know if you've ever sponged one of your pieces, like a bowl, and you've like sponged it after it was kind of all done. You'll see the grog comes up, and that is not ideal in my opinion. I don't like the look of it. I feel like it changes the texture, so I just steer clear of a sponge at this stage. Yep. Okay. I'm going to poke a hole here to here because you want to be able to have air go through, and sometimes what happens with these big pieces is that the heat won't go through. So a little bit of air there. Then I can put a little bit of hole here. Hole. So that air underneath can kind of go through. And that is done. We did it. Okay. Let's go to sleep. And mess. What a mess. Okay. Looks pretty good. Smooth it out with my finger. I don't want to use too much of this sponge because the sponge will bring out the rocks in the clay because this is pretty groggy clay, like I said. So now it's smooth, and then you add this to it, and it just takes off that smoothness and it adds rocks back to it. Okay. That should be good. Alright. Here's my platter. This will be fired. And yeah. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And if you make a platter yourself, let me know in the comments section. If you have any tips or tricks, I'm more than happy to hear them, because you can always be improving your technique. And I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Bye!